everybody, it's Thursday.
And welcome to this week's edition of The Night Bite.
I'm Josh.
And I'm Emily. And thanks for being here with us this evening.
Hey, what's up, Andrew?
So I guess we will always start by kind of giving a fishing report. And we actually had kind of an adventure this past weekend.
Yep. We made the trek down to Iowa, long overdue, and it'll be the first of many trips down there. It was a great time. Those Widowmaker guys, the whole Oberfell family is awesome.
That is true. And the funny thing is, we love that river fishing. But the Wolf River, as big and crazy as it sometimes is, and it sounds obvious, but it's nothing compared to the Mississippi that we were fishing in. So that was a really unique experience. And as far as river fishing goes, a lot of things were very similar, but a lot of things were kind of different. So that was really neat to be going out and actually fishing with somebody new.
Yeah, it was pretty interesting to fish. We fished a lot of tungsten, mid-river, and it was a lot of semi-vertical fishing. It was very cool, unique stuff that mostly would be applicable to bigger rivers, just because they're a little bit more they're wider, right? So you don't have such like direct current. Like the Wolf River would be hard to jig, tungsten jigs in the middle, but you find the little breaks and you can find stuff. They were showing us little rock piles and stuff that they're like, oh, let's check this one. And it's like, what? And then you're in the middle of the river and then we're pulling bluegills. And so it's pretty crazy.
And bluegills were one of the things that we caught, but honestly, just a big multi-species weekend because, anything can be moving through the river at any point. I guess that sounds crazy. You think that fish are like patterning up, but, I think using those byways and some of those mid-river structures, it just was amazing how many different fish that we caught.
Yeah, we caught all kinds of stuff. Emily almost got her first scar to the boat. We saw it. We watched the hook pop out. That's normal for those fish. So
it came up, it flipped all over the place.
Yeah, it was exciting. So, it was a good time and look forward to doing that again.
But aside from the gar, and then you mentioned bluegills, there was all kinds of smallies, there was walleyes, there was crappies, there was tons of drum. And sometimes people really scoff at that, but everyone seems to just toss them back, which is great because the amazing thing is how big they've gotten. And yes, they can be annoying, they pick your bait and all of that, but man, it kind of is really a fun fight to get them in. They are getting big and they have huge fight in them.
Yep, it was really fun. We even mixed a catfish in just for giggles. So
oh yeah, that's right.
So it was a great time, and we'll have to do it again.
That is for sure. So with that, I was gonna say I don't even know if I remember the water temps. That feels like a long time ago at this point. Yeah.
Water temps were in the upper 70s, sometimes 80, and we dealt with a lot of rain. We dealt with a lot of heat. We dealt with some wind, so it was all kind of mixed in there. But it was, they showed us their spots for all those different applications, and it was good.
It was good. So let us know where you guys are at and how fishing is going for you. What's biting or what's not, because we're interested in that.
Yep.
And other than that, as we talk through the evening, if you have other questions or comments, and make sure to leave that in the comment box as well, because we would love to talk about that. But otherwise, Let's bring in our guest. So Blake, thanks for being here.
Yeah, thanks for having me, guys.
Yeah. So we are so excited to be talking fishing and bait and tackle and Eurotackle and all of that. But before we get there, for maybe anybody who doesn't know you yet, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. So my name is Blake Tollefson. Currently live in the Eau Claire, Wisconsin area. Been here for about 8 years now. Originally grew up in northern Minnesota, just south of Duluth. I spent the first 20 or so years of my life there. Fish as much as I possibly can. Panfish are really important to me, but I do a fair amount of walleye fishing, smallmouth, trout, a little bit of muskie fishing now and then. So try to do a little bit of everything.
That's amazing as a pan fisherman that you left Minnesota to come to Wisconsin.
It's funny because the way I grew up is nowhere near as good as like this area of Wisconsin. Like if you go further west, it's fantastic. But the area I grew up in is actually terrible for panfish. So
Well, then welcome to Wisconsin. So then I got to ask, have you been out fishing lately? Like what's biting or what's not?
Yeah. So I get out probably 2 or 3 days a week on average. Last time I was out was a few days ago. I was targeting crappies. In my neck of the woods, on the flowage that I was fishing, a lot of the fish were related to cribs. So, and that's pretty common, at least in this neck of the woods. This, as we get towards the later end of summer, a lot of those fish tend to relate towards wood again. So, catch them on plastics, some on hard baits. But majority of the fish came on plastics, but more the nicer ones came on hard baits.
Cool.
I hear you say fishing deep cribs, and I love that. I love that summer fishing. I love that pattern. And it was kind of a wonky spring, you know, with temps up and down and this and that and everything. So it is also nice to hear that, you know, it sounds like fish are in more consistent pattern.
Yeah, they are. They definitely are. Yeah, everything started slow, and then it just kind of accelerated super fast. And things have been, at least in this neck of the woods, pretty consistent here for the last month or so.
So I got to mention, you know, you kind of said like you use hard baits, and did you say like jigs and plastics? So like, can you give us some examples? Like, what are you using for those situations?
So primarily, what I am using, if I'm vertical jigging, it's likely going to be kind of a combination of two baits. First one is going to be a fat assassin. So that's like a straight tail option. And I'm putting that on a 16th or in some instances a 1/8 ounce jig. So that's just basically a little straight tail option. I don't know how well you guys can see that.
Yeah.
And then if I'm targeting specifically bigger fish or like trying to find the more aggressive fish, then I switch to something like an 1/8 ounce Z Viber. And a lot of people think that's big bait for crappies, but look at a crappie's mouth, they have no problem eating a bait that size. So that's kind of my 1-2 punch.
Are you putting anything on the hook on that back, or you fish it as is?
Nope, just fish it as is. Yep, there's definitely no reason. No reason. If the fish are hungry, they'll eat it.
That's crazy. You know, I hear you saying, you know, the 1/8 ounce jig, sometimes 16th. I definitely use the 16th. Sometimes I feel like I have to downsize from that. I mean, are you then only targeting like crappies, or you still get bluegills mixed in?
Typically with these presentations, it's things like either bass, walleyes, or crappies. So usually you don't catch too many bluegills. You will on the plastic side, like with that fat assassin. And every once in a while you'll catch a big bluegill on that 1/8 ounce Z Viber. But it's the advantage of that bait is that it deters a lot of the smaller fish. So you're really only picking up the little bit larger fish, or at least the more aggressive ones.
Well, and actually, that's a really great point, because there is kind of always that point between spring and summer where, like, even those little fish that are starting to grow up, they get bold, and even they will come and like try to eat something like almost the same size as them. It's like, what are you doing? And when you have a plastic, when you have a worm, sometimes honestly, I love plastics, but even that will get bit off, or the tails will get chewed off. When you are able to put down a hard bait like that, that is, I want to say indestructible. Maybe that's unfair.
It's the disadvantages that, like when you fish things like cribs, is with those treble hooks, it's a lot easier to get stuck in the wood than with just the regular jig and plastic. So be prepared to lose a few if you're going to go into that situation.
Just sit like right on the outside edge of that brush.
Yes. Yeah.
Oh my gosh, that's awesome.
You know, and that's kind of strictly for like the crib oriented bite, which is only, that's not, most of our lakes don't have cribs, but there's, you guys are familiar with Wisconsin. There's a lot of lakes in Wisconsin that do have cribs. You know, if I was fishing a lake that doesn't have any woody structure like that, then it's all jig and a paddle tail. For the most part, you know, something like a B vibe. This is the 2-inch B vibe. This is the original one that Eurotackle came out with. It's a 2-inch paddle tail, and I have caught more crappies, more panfish in general in my life on this single bait than I have on anything else. It's tied on almost 100% of the time. Black or white, black and chartreuse. Those probably those three the most. black is if I have a bee vibe tied on, it's black to start. So
it's just so interesting to me because, okay, I guess I personally never in my life have fished with black very much before. And then all of a sudden this year I started fishing this like plastic that kind of looks like a leech, like very loosely I'm saying. Just has a little wiggly tip. But so then I'll use the black and then I don't know, maybe it looks like a leech. That's I guess my thought. But I have been now like converted. I feel like I always want to use black baits now because I'm like, man, this is like working. So that's why I asked that.
Yeah, it's all it takes is like that one day to build your confidence, and then you're like, this is my favorite. And you know, like 2 years from now, it could be a different bait that I'm using chartreuse a bunch, and like, yeah, this is my new favorite. But for like the last 5 years, it's been black. So I think it will stick around for a while.
Well, and that's kind of the fun part about how technology is evolved a little bit is that, you know, we take a lot of pictures of fishing. Like everybody takes so many pictures now because everyone has a phone, and it is funny to look back through the years and you see all the majority of what your fish are caught on and the bait that you use, and you're like, why was I throwing that day? Like I wouldn't throw that this year. Like, but you know,
right.
but it's always a good reminder to, you know, if you are having a tough day, you can look back in your pictures and be like, oh, maybe I should throw something like that because, you know, just that little switch, that something you weren't thinking on, you're not on that train of thought for that year or that season. You know, you can go back to something that did work and throw it in because you have proof. You have proofs that it was working at some point at that body of water, maybe even. And yeah, it's really funny to see how it evolves. Like this year for me, Emily says black is this is her year of the black. For me, it's been like the year of the 3-inch swim bait. Like I've been throwing 3-inch swim baits like nobody's business, and just like I caught a bluegill on it the other day. I'm like, well, if they're eating 3-inch swim baits, why wouldn't they eat 4-inch swim baits?
Right. Yeah, it's amazing what bluegills and crappies will eat. Like it blows me away sometimes. Like I actually stumbled onto a weird bite probably 7 years ago using like larger jigging wraps. So like 2 to 2.5 inch jigging wraps are like baits similar to a jigging wrap, catching crappies. And so now like during this certain time of the year, I go out to this lake and I use jigging wraps, and I mean, you would think I'm fishing for walleyes or something, but it's nope. That's what the crappies want to eat this time of year in this lake. It's just weird.
That's awesome.
It's just weird. That's secretly a very similar story of where my black little leech came from.
Yeah. Just takes one time to build confidence.
Yeah. Yeah. So you had mentioned the Z-Viber, and that was, you know, that is honestly a really great bait. And we were talking about colors. So is that one of those that you can just toss them down there because they're all like a little bit metallic-y, or you really got to focus on match that hatch?
No, I don't worry about matching the hatch. The only time I would really worry about that is like clear water lakes. So maybe something that looks like a bluegill, something that looks like a perch. But like in the stained lakes, I usually go for something a little more gaudy or something that's going to stand out. So like this pink UV one is one of my favorites. This black and chartreuse, like that one there stands out really well too. But otherwise, like this last year, Eurotackle came out with a line of like kind of match the hatch series. And so there's 5 different ones that are like, they look like real fish. So there's a sunfish pattern.
Yeah. Let me see.
Yeah, they should be on the website. Yep.
Here we go.
So Z series.
Yeah, view all.
Oh, right there.
Yep.
Oh,
and
yeah.
Look, you'll want to click on the 1/8, and that should have most of them.
View.
And
so match the hatch right there. Look at that.
Yep.
Oh my gosh! Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, so those are really, really fantastic for when you do want to match the hatch.
Yeah, those are very awesome. Now, this one is one of my favorites. So for those of you that don't know, you might know them as, you know, red chubs or something like that, you know, in your bait store. But this is actually something called a red belly dace. There's a northern and a southern variety, and they do look like that. Those fish live in your streams and your lakes, and then it's a very beautiful like minnow. It's a dace, but that's a very cool bait to have because you would be surprised at the amount of fish that eat that, versus throwing like a maybe just a normal minnow color,
Yeah.
Yeah, except for that bluegill one though, fish would eat that too.
This one?
Yeah, for sure.
That's a
I guess
sunfish.
It's a pumpkin seed. Yeah.
Hey Kent.
Huh.
That's awesome.
And then it was awesome to see though, because you're talking about fishing brush, and sometimes it's deep or sometimes it's not so deep. But even besides that 1/8, there is a lot of different sizes.
There is. Yeah, there is. So there's a 1/16. That was the original one. So it's 1 inch. Yep, right there. So that's the original one. That one is kind of the one that everybody's familiar with. That's what kicked off this, kind of micro lipless crankbait craze that we've been seeing the last few years. Because at the time that was the smallest, and it was for about 2 years. And then you started seeing other companies come out with it. Then Eurotackle added the 1/8 and the 3/8 the following year. So that 1/8 is kind of a it's a good ice size bait for big crappies, walleyes, things like that. That 3/8 and then the 5/8 are more of kind of the the open water size. So for guys that like to throw things like rip and wraps or blade baits, it's kind of a good option for that. And then most recently he came out with the Z-Viber Micro. So that's the same weight as the original Z-Viber. It's 1/16. It's just about half the size. So it's 0.6 inches. So just over half an inch.
And those really are so cool. They are really tiny. Can you click that one?
Yeah.
How many different color options does this one have?
There's got to be 18 or something.
Oh, like the same as all the other ones? Okay. Oh my gosh. Look at that.
Yeah, I think with...
Oh, there you go. Yeah, that's a good.
And then they also have Match the Hatch too. So you got little baby ones.
When they're that small, I wonder how much that makes a difference.
Those small ones, like in the wintertime, I've had some really, really good success on like the little sunfish and some of those.
Well, that's really super cool that you can choose a single hook or right now. That's not a leech though. But I like that you can choose a single hook or the treble hook.
Yep. Yeah, it's like, because that was kind of one of the biggest complaints, I guess, about the original Z-Viber, which if you take the time to fish it, you don't lose any fish with that single hook. You might miss the occasional fish, but the advantage with single hook is when you hook up with a fish, you're less likely to lose it than you are with a treble hook. But having the option, it's been kind of understood that people wanted to have both, and some people like to strictly fish the treble, some like the single, so why not include both?
Yeah, that's awesome.
Okay, I asked you way earlier, like if you put any kind of bait on the Z-Viber, and you said no, that you fish it as is. Honestly, though, I have put like a little tiny wiggle tail on that single hook. Just because you can. I don't know, it adds a little bit of color, it adds a little bit of flash, I don't know, you can really control the size of that bait. So it's nice to have that 1 inch version. It's nice to have that half-inch version. But when you can even play between that is actually really super cool. Yeah,
and there's there are times I don't do it in the summer months, but during the winter, like if I'm targeting trout, I use that 16th ounce Z-Viber a lot. And trout can be super picky. So sometimes I throw a wax worm or a mummy worm or something on there, and it makes a huge difference.
Yeah, that's awesome. It does.
That's a really interesting point. I never thought about using one of those for targeting trout. And I guess I don't even do that often, but I'm like, it's just a minnow. Like, why would it not eat it?
They absolutely love them. Like you think trout, you think, spoons or, like the hook setting devices, but at least in the lakes in my area and the lakes that I fish, those have outproduced everything.
That's awesome. And then you had mentioned a few different kinds of plastics as we've been talking here. Can we pull some of the, well, it's just easier to see. It's like really nice to see.
So that fat assassin. The fat assassin's right there. That's kind of like great vertical jigging, drop shotting bait. I use it a lot for vertical jigging and drop shotting. And then the B Vibe, the 2 inches, it's the upper right corner there. Yeah, so that's like in my opinion, it's the ideal crappie swim bait. Like I just absolutely love that bait. There's a 1.5 inch version though too, so that's good for picky fish or more for bluegills and stuff.
Well, and that black one is exactly the one that you showed us, so that was actually pretty cool. But quite a range of colors for no matter what water conditions you're fishing, so that's awesome.
Oh, yeah, 100%.
Awesome.
Mm-hmm.
While we are on the website, is there anything else that we should specifically check out while we're here? I mean, I'm sure like one of everything, I know that, but
yes. Like if we're talking strictly open water, primarily I'm using Fat Assassin and the B Vibe in terms of soft plastics, and then hard baits, Z Viber 1/8, and then there's a couple others that we should check out on there. There's a micro crankbait and a micro jerk bait too. Oh. So that Z cranker, that bottom left corner, that is good if you like to troll for crappies. That's
I hope everybody just heard what Josh. Ooh.
Yeah, look at that. All kinds of little.
Oh, look at that one.
That's actually my favorite open water trout bait too. For like when I fish trout, like stock trout in lakes around here, that bait is fantastic for those as well.
That's actually really super awesome.
Yeah, always good colors.
When you just kind of started getting into trolling more cranks, I just never toss one out there. I just really should.
I got into painting them. I don't know how much we've trolled with them.
That Z spender right there. I don't know if you guys, anybody who pays attention to crappie fishing, they've seen this trend over the last few years. You hear like the Linders talking about it a lot, or Target Walleye throwing small X wraps or small jerk baits for crappies. Now this is just another option, and it works fantastic, especially during that pre-spawn period. But I think what a lot of people do is, they realize that they work during the pre-spawn, so as soon as that's done, they put them away. Well, that's good for like going over the tops of weeds and stuff too. If you don't want to use a soft plastic, that only dives to a foot or two, so it can just cruise right over the tops of those weeds, and then you can just stop it, and it will just sit there. And that's a lot of times when you'll actually get that fish to bite.
That is actually really important. That pause. I don't know. Sometimes that is right when the fish bite.
Mm-hmm.
That's cool.
Well, and Emily's famous story that she brings up all summer long is when we fish over the top of these really deep trees, and she's fishing a foot under her float with a little plastic. And I think she would have fun with something like this too, because it's very, very similar. Because we're fishing topwater crappies, but it's in over 20 feet of water, because the fish are chasing minnows out of the trees and up, and then they kind of move around. And
well, because the other thing is like in the structure, in the trees are where like the gills are and some of the crappies and all of that. And so like if the bait goes too far in there, then they just get eaten. And so I don't know if it's just the time of the year that this is happening, but then those minnows are just kind of hovering right over that brush. And so then as it starts to get a little bit darker and the crappies start to come out more, exactly like you're saying, it gets pushed up. And maybe I should try something like this, because otherwise you're right. I just do like a bobber, like a foot down, and it's crazy.
Yeah, I bet that would work well in that very similar situation.
Well, and in something like that, one of the funny things is then you either have to be like somehow the biggest minnow or the best minnow, because then you are like the competition with everything else that is the natural forage. And so like, if you look at match the hatch, if you match it too close, maybe then you'll just be one of the school, and then, maybe you'll get missed. So sometimes like having something flashy or bright or, just all of the unique things that these baits are offering, sometimes that makes a huge difference in getting that fish to bite.
Yeah, it definitely can.
I do like your idea of those weeds though too, because especially earlier summer, when it always seems like there's that point where crappies kind of disappear, but it's in those growing weeds. And so when you have a way to target them, that's important.
Mm-hmm.
For sure.
Cool.
So yeah, those are kind of the main baits I use during the summer months. There's a ton of other ones, like at least in terms of crappie fishing. Obviously, like there's that finesse lineup, like if you fish for smallmouth or walleyes and stuff, there's a ton of good options in there too. Yeah, like those three, those are brand new this year. Those Ben had a different Metacraw in the past, and then he had a different paddle tail and different straight tail in the past. But what he's done is just basically taken the existing line and expanded them in size. So they're still finessey in terms of, bass or walleye size things. 3 inches or so is still pretty small in terms of the bass world. But like I do a lot of river smallmouth fishing. So I've been using that B-Vibe 3-inch, throwing that just on a jig head. It works fantastic for that. It's if you like Kitex, or other paddle tails like that, this is kind of like a more subtle version of like your Fat Swing Impact or like the Big Bites, their paddle tail. And then that little Metacraw has actually been super good lately. I've been Nico rigging that in a lot of the river systems by me, and smallmouth have been just annihilating it. So it's finessey stuff, is what I like, and they catch fish, so that's really what matters.
Yeah.
When you are fishing smallmouth this time of the season, are they in those deeper mid channels, or are you still fishing pretty shallow?
In the river systems by me, so I live by the Chippewa River, so I fish a ton of different stretches of the Chippewa River. For the most part, the fish tend to be somewhat close to the bank, but the chip by me is not super deep either. I think like Mississippi fish is a little bit different, but like the Chippewa River, the Flambeau, a lot of these smaller rivers, the fish will push out, towards the middle more, but they still stay, relatively close to the bank.
Yeah. So when you see people still casting, and especially up at rocks and stuff, that's well, and it was that craw out there. Yeah, that's perfect.
Yeah, and it's something a little bit different too, which is, for smallmouth river fishing, like they'll throw a jig or, like a paddle tail or something like that. But those fish aren't seen just like a little craw. Like, I mean, they are because it's what they're eating in the river. But just a little craw, that thing works just fantastic.
Well, and one thing that I do appreciate about the Eurotackle lineup is that there isn't much out there for finesse specific companies, right? Because everybody wants to either cover the whole thing, or most often than not, they cover like power fishing, because people think of finesse fishing as like an Aberdeen hook with a drop shot weight, and that's like finesse fishing, or like you said, like a 16th ounce jig on like 4-pound test, and that's finesse fishing. But that doesn't necessarily mean that it has to be like that. Most of the stuff that I fish with, if you do enough digging, like I fish with like 8 or 12-pound super braid, because it's 1 pound diameter. And so, you don't have to, you can power finesse fish almost if you want to.
Yes.
You can get those categories within that finesse fishing family. And, Eurotackle does really well, kind of covering all those bases in there, giving us finesse fishermen and panfish anglers in general, like a little bit more options than just throwing bobbers and worms and jigs and twister tails,
Yeah, I 100% agree with you. It's like that's really what the company has been focused on, is finesse. And there's been, over the last several years, people are like, well, when are you going to make a bigger this? When are you going to make a bigger this? And it's, in certain aspects, there might be room to go into that category. But if it's doesn't fit well into the finesse nature of the brand, then why would you do that? Like, we're not going to make a bunch of 5-6 inch jerk baits, because that's not really finesse fishing,
Mm-hmm.
Well, and I love all this because so many people think Eurotackle and they think ice fishing, and it's like, yes, it is like, yes, totally. But I mean, like you're showing us, there's so much more than that. Well, and even in it's one of those, well, a lot of these things are different items that you can use open water and ice. And so anytime that you have tackle that you can kind of not have to put away for half the year, that's always awesome.
Right. Yeah, I'm totally with you there. Yeah, there is a lot of this stuff that applies well to both open water and ice.
So one of the other things that I have to ask, and I guess I don't mean to change the subject here, but we're here talking tackle, and people like us, we like to just collect one of everything. And so storing it is something that's always on people's mind. And I just have to also admire your storage that you have going on around you. Like, can you tell us what helps you be successful in storing all of this?
Yes. I guess for me is finding kind of the right box with the right baits. That's probably the first thing. So like there's certain boxes that, work really well for this category of baits. And then there's other boxes that work really well for this category. So that's, for me, that's kind of the biggest thing. So I'll give you a couple examples. This is one of the new Eurotackle boxes that came out last year. It's perfect for, it fits jig heads perfect. So those are the jig heads that Ben sells. That's the soft lock tungsten. And then there's a couple other versions of that box. So depending on what a person might be doing. So this is one that's split. So if you just want, like, if you're trout fishing or short fishing, something, you can just take one box with you, throw a few plastics in there, a few jigs, maybe a few hard baits, or something like that. So that's kind of really the first thing is finding boxes. A couple more examples. These are some newer ones from a company called Fish More, and they make boxes designed specifically to fit only specific lures. So this is a 3600 size box, and there's those little foam inserts. And basically, those are designed to only fit 1/8 ounce Z vibers. And then they have other boxes. Like here's one that fits just the Z crankers.
That is
this is a kind of a multi-purpose box, so it fits 1/8 ounce Z vibers, Z spenders, the jerk baits, and then Z crankers down there. And eventually these will be coming to Ben too. So I think he'll have these on his website at some point in time. And then for plastics and stuff, original bags are hard to beat. And then I just invest in one of these bad boys and just fill it up.
I have to quick go back and do a shout out for those Fishmore boxes though, because we ran into them last season at the ice shows. And
Yep.
First of all, they are awesome people. They have a great booth. And even just like what you showed us, those few boxes right there, it's like a lot of like, ooh, ah. But there's even like so many more options. It's really impressive to walk up and see that. But I actually got one of their jig boxes that was like, it has just straight lines. Then you can organize your jig. Do you have one? Oh my gosh.
Yep. I got one here somewhere.
I have never been happier with a jig box.
Right. Same here.
Yeah, mine's even like a spoon box. Yeah, that's awesome.
There's this one too. This is the smaller version. I think I know which one you're talking about too. But yeah, these are like their spoon boxes. These are kind of their only universal thing that they sell, if I remember right. But like, it doesn't really matter what you fish for. They have a box for it. Like every Rapala product, tons of Berkeley products. Like for the bass fishermen who throw a lot of Mega Bass Vision 110s, those are $25 lures. So they make boxes that you can fit just a handful of those, which is super helpful. What else do I have for boxes? I have lots of different boxes. So
well, in those Fishmore boxes, I'm going to be straight up with everybody. They do cost a little bit, right? Because they are custom boxes. Like Blake's showing us, like they make boxes for specific baits. But I will tell you this, it is worth the investment. I think our 37 T3 Pro is what it's called, and that's it's for just lining up your jigs and not reaching into a box where all of your jig sizes have fallen in or hooked underneath the dividers or any of that. That is like super awesome. The other thing that's super awesome is that it keeps your hooks and your paint sharp. And so, you can put it in there. You can see how many of which ones you have. You can line them up by size and color. And it just makes it so much easier. And it's like, You know, I think it's like 30 or 40 bucks for a box, but like just think of how long you've had some of your 3,700 boxes, especially if you run,
Right.
you know, a soft side bag. I bet I threw away 3,700 boxes that were probably older than I was when I replaced them with this T3. So just, you know, take that into account. They last a long time, and it's going to keep all that investment in your tackle so much better. So just a little caveat, but it's definitely worth it.
We don't even work with them. We
No.
just really like them.
We just really like.
You know, and the worst case scenario is if you were to crack this plastic box, this is a foam insert. You just pull that out and put it in another 3,600, 3,700, whatever you have. So that's really all you would need to do. The only other box I'll mention is these groove boxes. I don't know if you guys are familiar with these. I use a lot of these for ice. Like these smaller ones are fantastic for holding little jigs and stuff. But then in the summer months, they have these bigger ones, and like I'll put my bass jigs in here. Got one for chatterbaits. You know, just that's really what helps me, I guess, stay the most organized is just finding the right boxes for the right thing. And it's taken years to do this. I've gone through a lot of different styles, but that's kind of my thing is being organized. The only other thing I really like to do is I label the ends of my boxes so that when they're on a shelf or they're in a soft-sided bag, I can just be like, okay, yep, that's my bass jigs, that's my bladed jigs, this one's my panfish crankbaits. I can just pull them out. I think it was a $20 label maker, so well worth it in my opinion, just to stay organized.
I have to teach Josh how to do that.
Not gonna happen. I'm not like all of my stuff. I need to see all of my stuff. I know exactly how deep and where in the pile it is. So unless you touch it, I know where it is.
Hey, that works. It's whatever works best for you.
It does not work.
It doesn't work for her.
Yeah.
No, well, I mean, we're in the middle. We're in the middle of moving, and it should be a good adventure. I think we have figured out some stuff for organizing and.
Well, and I'm admiring like your wall and stuff. I'm like, oh my god.
I wish my brain worked like your wall. Like that's probably I spent most of my life like in a tackle shop, so that's just looks like home to me.
Yeah, it helps. Yeah, I just when I run out of something, I'm like, oh, yep, I got that, or I know I need to order, 5 packs of this beginning of next year, or whatever it might be.
That's awesome.
That is awesome. Well, especially when I use the same thing every time, I'll just get a bunch of those and know where to find them. That is so funny. Oh my gosh, that's awesome. Thank you for taking us on the tour of all of that.
Absolutely.
Oh my gosh. So I guess, we talked about some baits and we talked about a little fishing. I mean, I guess where do you go from here with the season?
Well, just going to keep fishing until it freezes over. At this time of year, really the bite just gets better and better. So I look forward to that, especially as we get into fall. That's really my favorite time to fish, especially for crappies. They school up again, they're really, really big schools, and they go out and suspend over these big basins, or some instances they'll go to the cribs and just pile up, and you can have some really, really awesome days in the fall.
And then with fall for you, does that mean like automatically upsizing, or they're still eating kind of those same things throughout the year?
Yeah, really for me, I started upsizing this time of year. So when I was talking about that 2-inch fat assassin or that 1/8 ounce Z Viber, a lot of that stuff applies basically from this time of year through till ice. And then there are days where you have to, especially like maybe you'll get a big cold front or something that comes through in the fall, where I'll just bring the ice plastics out, because it can make a huge difference between catching a few fish or a lot of fish.
And did I hear a rumor that there might be some new stuff coming this fall?
Yeah, there might be, yeah. So there's a couple new plastics. I don't want to go into it too much, but there's some new ice plastics, and then there's a brand new hard bait. It's basically a revision on one of the baits that's on the website now. Basically a complete redesign. You're going to see the same name, but similar concept to what the bait does, but it's basically a completely new design. So I'll kind of leave a little mystery there. People can go look at the website and decide which one they think it's going to be. But
And for
it's a hard
anybody
bait.
who ends up with the Gen 1 of whatever the bait is, like keep it because now it's like a collector's item or something, right?
Yeah. Can't get rid of those. That's a collector's item. Make sure you keep them in the box and everything. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. I am sitting here looking at the website like, oh my God, what do you redesign? I hope it's not the mommy worms.
It's not. No, it's not the mummy worms. I'll tell you that.
Speaking of ice fishing baits, though, that is one of them to have because that is like the secret weapon that can always be. I cannot keep bait alive. I just,
Yeah.
But those will always be good.
Yeah, they're good for like 2 years. Like you just don't even have to worry about them. Like it's perfect.
What happens after 2 years? Do they still like hatch into a fly or they just like dry up?
No, they just get they get really dry basically after about 2 years. So it's kind of like it's just like using a really old wax worm. They just get hard and then with that the oils that are in there basically just dry up and get kind of rubbery.
Yeah, gross. The
Yeah.
fish love it.
Yeah.
I was hoping you were going to tell me like the different colors all turned into like different flies and stuff or something.
No.
Oh my gosh, that is funny though. And you can pick your different colors. So that is actually a really fun thing.
Yeah.
Especially if you're going out with kids or something, they can all like have a competition. Which color is going to catch the most fish? That's always really fun. Do that with the baits. Gosh.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, that is awesome. So for people that want to check out Eurotackle, I mean, I would say definitely Google that. Do you happen to know the website off the top of your head?
Yeah, it's just Eurotackle.net.
Oh, perfect. And actually, it looks like Josh might be posting it into the comments here. So for people at home, if you just want to click that, then you are welcome to shop away and hypothesize. Let us know which bait you think is going to change because I have some theories already. But Blake, if there are people out there that want to, follow along with you and your adventures and crappie fishing, how can they do that?
You can, it's just Blake Tollefson on Facebook. It's B Tollefson Fishing on Instagram. And then I do a lot of writing. So I write for Outdoor News, Midwest Outdoors. You can see stuff in there. Do a lot of stuff for some online blogs. I run the blog for Eurotackle. Submit a lot of stuff for Markham, Angling Buzz. So a lot of different places you can see stuff.
That is awesome. I know that we are going to go and check that out because you got a lot of good stuff out there. But other than that, thanks for being here tonight.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah. And to the people at home, thank you guys for being here as well, because that is always a ton of fun to be able to talk about all this kind of stuff. And if we don't see you on the water, then we'll see you on next week's edition of The Night Bite.